The Rebel Capitalist Show.
Where are prices today for building new? I know you focus on apartments, but I think it would be pretty similar when we look at the price per square foot for kind of a starter home, like a single family house that's not too extravagant with the finishes.
Yeah. So, well, a couple things. One, I don't want to. I love how you started this whole question, because I think the way we look at markets, the way we look at investing, is exactly how you do when it comes to the components and the cost per foot. And
Yeah.
a lot of people don't focus on this. But I tell everybody, like, I was buying in Texas at $40-$50 a foot from the banks directly for properties that cost 150 to replace.
There you go.
So, yeah. And so it's really important that people kind of always look at this. And so, and I'll just give you an example. Right now, we both live in Phoenix. Right now in Phoenix, if I was to buy an apartment building, it would cost close to $400,000 per unit to buy it. I'm talking about mid-90s product. If I was to buy that exact product in, say, Houston, Texas, it would be 200. The exact same product, the exact same year built. It's just that's how different.
But then what are the rents? Are the rents equivalent?
Well, exactly my point. So, but what we do is, so when we're looking at building versus buying, so in Phoenix right now, we're not buying because we have to buy at 400 a foot, but we can build at 250. In Houston, we would not build because we can buy at 200. So as we're looking at markets, we're trying to decide, where do we want to build and where do we want to buy? Because we do both. Right. So it's the same thing with single family houses. So if you go to the National Association of Home Builders, the NAHB, on their website, they'll tell you that the cost of a new home is now north of $40,000 more than it was just a year ago due to these supply chain issues. So
the cost to build is what
the cost to build. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's the average cost to build. I think it was a 2,000 square foot home. So you have to be looking at these things. And so those costs are real. People, the homeowner, the home builder, is not absorbing that. I could assure you. Right. So if a home was, say, $300,000 to build, and now it's $350,000, I can assure you the consumer is actually buying that, financing that. And so that's what's kind of driving a lot of these up. And if the Fed increases their interest rates like they say they're going to do, it's going to get even worse. It's going to create a pretty good slowdown on the sales side for single family homes,
which means more renters for
yes.
apartments or
right,
for single family homes.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
And on the other side of that, we're severely undersupplied on the renter side. So we have that happening on the homeowner side, and then we're severely undersupplied on the renter side, because from my standpoint, I've got 5 projects under construction. My costs are going up. My OSB, my wire, my lumber, my drywall, my labor, all that stuff's going up. So anything that I have being constructed today, at the end, when the dust settles, is going to be a lot more expensive than what I thought it was going to be when I started the process. So everyone's dealing with this issue right now. And the only way out of that, George, is rent growth. And if the market doesn't support it, it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't care, right? The market supports what it supports, but we do have a supply issue, which is, and we have a higher demand issue and a lower supply issue, which unfortunately, renters are going to be into a rough few years, in my opinion. And because we're already seeing, I just today was looking at the rent growth for Houston, 10% projected next year. 10. That is really, really not good. I mean, as a landlord, if you own stuff, most people would say, oh, that's great for us. It's not great. It's supposed to be probably 2, 3, 4%, just kind of keeping up with inflation. And it's not good when you're raising a tenant's rent $100 to $200 to $300 every year. And because that creates even more displacement. So we're heading into a really rough time for renters.
Yeah. And normally when inflation's at 2 or 3% is measured by CPI, but especially now when it's at most likely probably a lot higher than the CPI at 10%, and wages are only going up by, let's say, 3 or 4% in nominal terms, and then you got to bump rents by 10% to keep up with costs, and that's what really puts the squeeze. I don't know if I told you this, but just the other day, that I rent a condominium here where I am right now,
Yep.
and the building. And my lease is up in the middle of January, and the property manager said that if I want to rent this again for 2022, that they're going to increase the rent by 30%.
Yeah.
30%. They're going to increase my rent payments by $1,500 a month.
Yeah.
So
George, I know we're having the same thing. Well, we have I have a property management company. As you know, we got a couple hundred people in that company. Our rents are going up so fast in our portfolio. We looked at one property in Phoenix. We're $365 per unit below market. Wow. And we haven't,
and that's a huge percentage, because you're not charging $5,000 a month for rent.
Nope.
That's what, 1,800 a month or something.
Yep. So so what's happening is, because there's a supply issue and a big demand issue. In your case, the person you spoke with, they know if you leave, it's rented tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
So that's the issue. And so that's not good. Honestly, as a landlord, I'm just saying, so what's going to happen is cities, states, they're going to step in. You're going to see more rent control. You're going to see expanded Section 8 programs that cap the amount you can raise stuff. Rent specifically. St. Paul, Minnesota already did this. They capped rent. And so all the smart money, of course, moved away to other markets, because the last thing, and lenders, I was talking to Berkadia, who's owned by Buffett. I was talking to one of their top guys out of San Francisco. He was in my office 2 weeks ago. And he goes, Kenny, the coasts, they're about 15% vacant, both coasts except for Florida. And inland, he's like, I've never seen anything like it. It's all full. So everybody's like migrating inward, right? They're out of Washington, Oregon, California, and I'm generalizing, of course. But he said it's putting a lot of pressure on all this other stuff. And what lenders are starting to look at now, because he brought up St. Paul, is they're saying they just cross it off the list. We're not lending there, because
if there's rent control.
Yeah. I mean, smart. If you wouldn't, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, yeah. So they're starting to look at these government policies. And by the way, there is a rent issue. There is a rent growth issue and affordability issue coming, and there's already one right now. We're just we're in the first quarter right now, and so if you have anything, my suggestion to you is hold it and fix your debt long term to hedge inflation, and write it out, and make sure that you stay on top of things. And and to your point, you have to rip the Band-Aid off with some of these renters and just say, listen, this is where the market is now.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's talk about a couple things here. I think everyone knows there's a supply issue with real estate, but no one knows why. Back in the good old days of free market capitalism, the cure for high prices were high prices. So if rents got too far out of control, like they are now, then guys like Kenny McElroy would come in and just build a ton of apartments, houses. You obviously you don't discriminate. You're going to make money any way you can. So you'd build whatever the market wants if there's a profit to be had. So again, the cure for high prices are high prices. Well, we're seeing the high prices, but we're not seeing the cure.
Right.
So why? Why is that? Is that because of government intervention and distortions?
It's complicated, but that is one big reason. So if you think about it, if we had the director of housing for Arizona on my YouTube channel and my podcast to talk about this very thing. If you want to build something somewhere, there's massive oversight, which there should be, on zoning, on impact fees, which are connected to all the city services, on the design, how high you can go, all that stuff, parking regulations.
Have you seen that increase, Kenny?
Absolutely.
Since you've been doing this,
Without a doubt.
You've been doing this for decades.
Yep.
So you've seen that increase a lot. Okay.
Yeah. So one of the things that LA County did, if you think about this, because they're a pretty good, it's a small market, of course, but when you look at the national market, but in LA, so you think about it, let's just say you could put one house on 1 acre, and that's the zoning. That's what the government says. That's all you can do. So in other words, if you wanted to put 2, you cannot.
Right.
But what LA did recently is they relaxed it and said you can now double it, because they're starting to see prices so high. They're starting to see homelessness. And so they're saying, okay, George, you have 1 acre. We're going to now let you put 2 houses on there. That helps a lot because it helps. So that's one, that's just a zoning. They relax the zoning requirements, but there's a lot of other things that come into play with regard to that. So you can't just point all the fingers at the city. The other thing from a lender standpoint, the lenders, they want their money back, right? So they're taking a look at the cost to build versus the cost to buy and the financing and all that. So a builder can only build if there's a bank there waiting to provide money to somebody to be able to build. And then, of course,
that's, I think, something that the average person doesn't really consider, that when you're taking out these loans for $100 million, they're not really looking at your balance sheet. They're not looking and saying, Ken, what type of car do you have? Or Ken, what's your monthly income? They're looking at the project. They're lending on the project. They're not really lending on Ken McElroy.
That's 1,000%.
Obviously, you're in the equation there, but you're part of the equation with the project. And so I think most people, just because they're 9 to 5, they're usually in the mindset to where that bank is lending on the individual and not the overall project. So it doesn't really make sense to them why banks aren't willing to lend to all of these builders out there that they may have lent to in the past.
Yeah. So a great analogy would be, if you go out and buy a car, they're lending against the car.
Right.
And if you can't pay, then they take the car as collateral and they sell that off, and hopefully the car's worth more than the loan. Same thing with real estate. So if I'm going to build something, let's say 200 units, and it's a let's say a $60 million or $50 million project, the lender is looking at that and they're saying, okay, that project is going to pay me back.
Right.
So all the assumptions that I say, one, does Ken have the team, and where's the equity coming from and all that, and they got to check all those boxes. And yes, I'm also a guarantor on the loan, so I'm on the hook financially to be able to.
I didn't know that. You got to personally guarantee those loans
on new construction. You do.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I have all those things. So I have, let's call it a $30 million construction loan, a $20 million equity. So $50 million to build the project. At the end of the day, if I default, the lender comes in and they're just trying to, they don't care about the 20. They just are trying to get that 30 back.
Right.
So it's the same with whether you're buying one house or you're doing a mall or you're doing any kind of big master plan development. It's the same thing. As you start to use the big money, the asset itself, like the car, is what they look at as the collateral.
Yeah, right.